Imagine living your entire life inside a city that officially didn't exist. You could be born there, go to school there, get married there, raise a family there, and even die there. Yet if someone outside the city searched for it on a map, they would find nothing. No roads, no buildings, no name. For decades, the Soviet Union erased an entire city from existence, not because it had been destroyed, but because the world was never supposed to know it existed. Behind guarded checkpoints, thousands of scientists and engineers worked on one of the most closely guarded secrets of the Cold War. No visitors were allowed inside. Residents couldn't simply leave. Letters were censored. Maps were altered. Even speaking about the city could bring serious consequences. But if life there was so restricted, why did thousands of people willingly stay? The answer was hidden behind miles of barbed wire and one of the most dangerous nuclear facilities ever built. This is the true story of Ozyorsk, the Soviet city that officially never existed. To understand why an entire city disappeared from the map, we have to go back to the end of World War II. The United States had demonstrated the power of the atomic bomb. Almost overnight, the Soviet Union launched one of the largest scientific projects in its history. The mission was simple: build a nuclear weapon as quickly as possible. Failure wasn't an option. The Soviet government searched for a place far from major cities, somewhere isolated, surrounded by forests and lakes, easy to defend, difficult to find. Deep in the southern Ural Mountains, they found exactly what they needed. Construction began almost immediately. Thousands of workers arrived. Many were prisoners from Soviet labor camps. Working day and night, they built roads, factories, apartment blocks, schools, and a massive nuclear complex unlike anything the Soviet Union had ever attempted. Officially, the city didn't exist. On maps, there was only empty forest. Residents didn't use the city's real name. Instead, their address was simply Chelyabinsk 40, a postal code, not a city, not a place, just a number. Beyond the fences, armed guards checked every vehicle. Watchtowers overlooked every entrance. Leaving required permission. Entering was almost impossible. Yet behind those gates, life appeared surprisingly normal. Children played in parks. Schools opened every morning. Theaters filled with audiences. Shops were better stocked than those in most Soviet cities. Among the thousands who lived there was a young physicist named Nikolai Gubin. He had arrived in 1952, fresh from university, believing he was going to change history. He was 24 years old. He had never heard of Ozyorsk before receiving his assignment. He would spend the next 40 years never leaving it. For many residents like Nikolai, it felt like the best place in the country to live. But every morning, thousands of people walked through another set of gates, toward a place where one mistake could contaminate an entire region. Behind those heavily guarded gates stood the Mayak Nuclear Complex, one of the most secret facilities in the entire Soviet Union. Inside, scientists worked around the clock, producing the plutonium needed to build the country's first nuclear weapons. Every day, tons of radioactive material passed through the facility. Almost nobody outside the city knew it existed. Inside Ozyorsk, people knew exactly what they were building. They just weren't allowed to talk about it. In exchange for their silence, the Soviet government offered something unusual: higher salaries, better schools, modern hospitals, well-stocked supermarkets, new apartment buildings. While much of the Soviet Union struggled with shortages, Ozyorsk enjoyed a standard of living a few other Soviet citizens could imagine. Many residents later said they never wanted to leave. To them, the fences didn't feel like a prison. They felt like protection. But that protection came with a price. Nobody could simply move away. Travel required official permission. Visitors were almost never allowed inside. Every letter leaving the city was inspected. Every conversation was expected to remain inside the fences. Even children learned very early never to tell outsiders where they lived. Officially, they lived nowhere. On maps, their homes simply didn't exist. For years, the system worked. The reactors produced more and more plutonium. The Soviet nuclear program expanded rapidly. Ozyorsk became one of the most important cities the world had never heard of. But hidden beneath the concrete buildings, another problem was quietly growing. Nuclear waste. Every reactor produced it. Every day. At first, officials believed they could simply store it, until a permanent solution was found. Massive underground steel tanks were built to hold highly radioactive liquid waste. Each one contained unimaginable amounts of heat, generated naturally by the radioactive material inside. To keep the tanks safe, they relied on continuous cooling systems. As long as those systems worked, everything remained under control. But if the cooling ever stopped, the consequences would be almost impossible to predict. For years, nothing happened. The city continued growing. Families celebrated birthdays. Children played outside. Nikolai went to work every morning, the same way he always had. Head down, badge checked, gates opened. Life felt ordinary, until one cooling system failed. At first, almost nobody noticed. Days passed, then weeks. Deep underground, inside one storage tank, the temperature continued rising. Higher and higher. Pressure slowly built inside a tank that nobody outside Ozyorsk even knew existed. And on one ordinary afternoon, that hidden pressure reached its limit. On September 29, 1957, the ground shook. Not like an earthquake, like something underneath the earth had simply given up. The overheated storage tank exploded with a force equivalent to nearly 100 tons of dynamite. Hundreds of tons of concrete were hurled into the air. The explosion tore open the ground above the tank, scattering radioactive debris across nearly half a square mile in seconds. But the most dangerous part of the disaster was completely invisible. An enormous cloud of radioactive material rose high above the Soviet countryside and began moving with the wind, silently, without color, without smell, without any warning at all. Below that drifting cloud, families were eating lunch. Children were walking home from school. Farmers were finishing their afternoon work. Nobody looked up. Nobody knew. For almost 2 days, the Soviet government said nothing. No warning, no broadcast, no evacuation order. People went to sleep that night, breathing contaminated air, completely unaware. When soldiers finally arrived in surrounding villages, they gave residents 20 minutes to gather their belongings. One change of clothes, essential documents, nothing else. Families locked their front doors, believing they would return within days. They were never allowed back. Entire villages were bulldozed into the ground, not to clean the contamination, to hide it. Streets that families had walked for generations simply ceased to exist. Official maps were updated, the villages were removed, and the Soviet government told the world nothing. The disaster remained secret for decades. Even most scientists outside the Soviet Union had never heard of it. Today, the world knows it as the Kyshtym Disaster, one of the worst nuclear accidents in history, ranked alongside Chernobyl. Yet for 30 years, It was as invisible as the radiation itself. Inside Ozyorsk, life continued. The reactors kept operating. The schools stayed open. The fences held. Nikolai Gubin stayed too. He had nowhere else to go. His entire adult life had been built inside those fences. His colleagues were there. His memories were there. His home, such as it was there. He later said the hardest part wasn't the secrecy. It wasn't the restrictions. It wasn't even the explosion. The hardest part was knowing that outside those fences, villages had been erased, families had been displaced, and the world had been told nothing. Today, Ozyorsk remains a closed city. Visitors still require special permission to enter. Security checkpoints still guard every road leading in. On most maps, it remains difficult to find. But the strangest part of this story isn't that the city was hidden from the world. It's that tens of thousands of people called it home. They raised families there, built careers there, celebrated birthdays and mourned losses there, lived entire lives inside a place the world wasn't supposed to know existed. To the outside world, their city never existed. To them, it was simply home. Because history's greatest secrets aren't always hidden underground or locked inside vaults. Sometimes they're hidden in plain sight, behind a gate, on a road that doesn't appear on any map.